Hello, everyone, and welcome to this AmiSights presentation. Today, I will be your solo host. I am Lynn Ozer, president of Multifunding, and I am so happy to have Ryan Tansom of Arkona here with me as my guest. Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
Good, Lynn. How are you this morning?
I'm good, and I'm so happy to have you today. Ryan has a really, really cool background and a great story, lots of entrepreneurial wisdom to share with all of our audience. So let's get started. Ryan, I know that after your first job was with your family business. Tell us about that.
So family business, Lynn. I grew up in an entrepreneur household. My dad was always selling something, and he ended up making what he was doing a little bit more permanent when he decided to mortgage our house, buy a bunch of copiers back in the 90s. I think it was like $207,000 worth of copiers, and had 0 employees, and he grew it from 0 to about 115, and we did about 20 million in revenue. So Lynn, I worked in and out of the business my whole life. So 9 o'clock at night was like when I got the play-by-play what happened at the business. So I was living and breathing it while, in real time. And so I started doing the meter reads back before they were plugged into the internet. And then I was moving stuff, the warehouse stuff. And then I ended up doing internships, selling copiers, and then joined full-time in 2009. Right as the whole world had the great financial recession, and learned a lot, let's say, just like that.
Yeah, trial and error, boots on the ground, that kind of learning in the business, right?
Well, in Lynn, the thing that we had is like on 20 million in revenue, there's about a third of it that was essentially equipment transactions. And how the great financial crisis hit us is like the margins of the equipment just kind of evaporated, because it was a long time coming, I think, because of the internet and how people started buying copiers. Was a lot more knowledge. They could understand how to do it because there's a lot of mystery in how you buy copiers and do all the maintenance behind it. But I say that because the margins just got flipped on its head. So when I joined in 2009, my dad had been very distant from the company, and then we were incorrectly, when I say incorrectly, we were actually financing our receivables is how we were financing the business. So when I turned the business around, Lynn, I was juggling a $250,000 payroll every 2 weeks with barely any lines of credit, maybe a small one with a couple manufacturers. But I say all that because when I joined, it was really just in the deep end, and we had to figure out how to turn the business around in order to make it a viable company for everybody.
Okay, so that was before 2009 you were doing that, or that's when you started to do it?
That was when I joined full-time. So when I joined full-time, my dad had been distant from the company for quite a few years, and there was a GM running our business. So when I joined, we were sitting in the bank meeting in December of 2009, bank and CPA meeting, and my dad and I are sitting there. He had not been too involved because he had this GM running it. He was going through a bunch of personal stuff. And that's when we found out we lost $940,000 in 2009. So we had to spend the next 6 years turning the business around without the correct funding, which I know you guys know a lot about, but we just didn't know numbers and money like I teach now. And so it was all, we were just solving for revenue, gross profit, what was in the checking account. And so when you say the question is like, tell us about when you started in the family business, it was like, well, it was all this kind of bliss. And then it was like, jump right into the deep end and, fix it to keep it.
So so you were financing your business through the receivables. How did you get off that hamster wheel?
We sold the business. I mean, honest to God, Lynn, I call it the crack cocaine that people can't get off of. And it's, I say that tongue in cheek because it's damn near impossible unless you can fix your business or change your business model. And you don't want to be turning around a business when you're short on cash or cash flow doing that. And that sucked really bad. I can tell you every 2 weeks is a very solid memory. Every 2 weeks, the bank wire on Thursday night had to go across.
So, but you were able to sell your business for a handsome amount because the business was there. You needed a capital infusion, I suppose, to get ahead of the cash cycle.
That I said very clearly, that's exactly mechanically what we needed, was a bridge loan to get on top of the right side of the cash flow equation, right, Lynn. But the challenge was and this is where like we had a really good business on 20 million in revenue, Lynn. You have about 8 million that was equipment that was not profitable, but it was like the whole industry is the razor blade. Like you sell something at a loss so you can get the 50% maintenance that comes with it,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
bank finance. So like our maintenance agreements, Lynn, were bundled in with the equipment financing.
Right.
So like we had $12 million of locked in bank finance contracts, and these banks would look at us and I'm like, we could fire half our staff, ride this cash flow stream into the ground, and there's a net present value of that cash flow stream, but none of the banks understood it. I'm like, I look at the banks, I'm like, you're the reason that we're actually in this problem right now, because we had done all the turning around, but they had actually sold their SBA loan. They were loving the fees that they were making off of us, and they wouldn't help us whatsoever. And they literally were like, well, we sold your SBA loan and good luck, guys. And I'm like, no, like we have a healthy business if we could just get the right structure of capital. And so anyways, I could go,
I hear
I could
you.
go down
So,
the rabbit hole.
but that's probably a good lesson and interesting to a lot of our listeners, because, you do get into that situation, and in order to turn around, you have to have a degree of patient capital. But you already had an SBA loan. Oftentimes that's what we suggest to get out of that. But that wasn't an
Well, if we want to
something
really
that
get
you
into the nitty gritty here, Lynn,
right. No, but
is
anyway,
well,
so
no,
let's
I was gonna say, well, just to comment on that, I think it's important because and this is why I'm so passionate about finance. I mean, literally, I was a copy
yeah.
sales rep and I got a D in accounting, and now I teach finance. So like, it's the world's way of laughing. I mean, or we can all realize that this story is that fundamental to me, because what happened was that bank was nothing short of happy to collect 700 to 800 grand a year off of fees off of us. But they took our SBA, the 7A SBA, they sold it on the aftermarket. They
I
were
know.
making the money servicing it, and then they were
Right.
actually making all the money factoring, which is selling the receivables. And they were like, well, we don't want to refinance you, because they actually got an FDIC covenant after the 09 crisis, because they had a bunch of crap loans in their portfolio. So they actually, all of the crap ran right downhill to my dad and I. So like there was nothing really fundamentally wrong with our business. It was the bank was under their pressure from having all their bad loans.
Right.
They wanted to get rid of us. So this, long story short, this the kind of the fundamental to me now is I wish that people could understand their business through the lens of finance, so they can go get what they want from the financing partners.
You can say that again louder and louder, but that we do. I mean, so many entrepreneurs are so skilled at their business, and then when it comes to the financials, a lot of them, have to use outside help with accountants and so forth, which is all wonderful, but they do need to understand it so that they can be on top of
Well,
it.
and how I think the analogy rings true to me, Lynn, is like it's like your health. Like I hope these days people know you can't blindly trust the doctor. Like if you do, you're going to get a hip when you don't need it. You're going to get a shoulder when you don't need it. You're going to get your back fused when you don't need it, or you're going to get your back fused when you need it, but it might impact your heart because you got a heart problem, but no one talked to each other. And it's like, you can't know how to do all of it, but you have to know that it's all connected and what is healthy for the whole. And that's kind of the same thing with your business. And then you can go hire the right people. But I think the blind trust, we can't do that anymore, because you have situations like myself that you get into when you think everybody's looking out for you, but you realize they don't get paid to look out for you.
So well said. Okay, so because of this, and now your passion is totally directed to helping others not make the mistake that you made. Tell us what you did. You sold the business. Everyone's happy for the moment, but now here you are, a very young man with no business to go to and rescue every day. So then what?
Well, I lasted 60 days at the buyer's office and I quit because I was not capable of taking directions from other people.
Well, that's good that
So
you figured it out so quickly.
I would say that. And, even though so I read this book called Finish Big, Lynn, by Bo Burlingham, and he talks about how 75% of the people are unhappy after they sell their business, no matter how much money they made. I can now tell you, after 300 and almost 80 podcasts, interviews in myself, that that's very true. That's why I started the podcast after we sold, because I had to fire 60 out of the 90 employees. We sold for over 8 figures, and we had then 53.5% taxes, and then we paid off a couple $1 million in debt, and we fired, like I said, 60% of the employees. And I went, what the heck was that? And it was not what I really wanted as an outcome. I wanted my dad to be financially fine when he retired. I wanted to have a chunk of money to bring me onto the next journey, but essentially I wasn't in control of all of the factors that I wish I would have. So after I quit, I need to help figure out what we had missed. And one of the things that we had missed, and I'm summarizing a decade now of what I've been up to, but we weren't treating the company like an asset. So we were what I would call us a $20 million lifestyle business, Lynn. And I know there's a lot of definitions of
Yes.
lifestyle, but
Yeah.
my definition of it is when you're solving for annual cash flow. So even though we're doing 20 million in revenue, we were sucking as much cash out of the company as we could every year through salary, perks, and distributions. Never once were we really looking through the lens of, hey, if we invest in this ERP system, hire this president, or launch this product, what will the company be worth after we do that? It was, will this allow us to generate more cash flow? Well, the thing is, when you invest, there's a period of time where it's the cash is going the wrong direction and hopefully it's for a return. So that was one of the fundamental things, Lynn, that we didn't understand valuation. So therefore we didn't know how our strategies were growing value or decreasing value because we didn't have a framework for decision-making.
Interesting. So under the premise that you start a business to build an asset and eventually exit and sell and get that asset's value. That's what you decided and knew that now that that's what you wanted to impart that wisdom on others. So tell us what you did.
Yeah. So that is, I'll kind of tweak a couple of ways of how we describe this. One is that I just want people to get what they want. Honestly, it sounds very cliche, Lynn, but like what I realized, so I was in Vistage, I was in all these peer groups. I've been in Vistage, EO, you name, there's like 5 different other peer groups in Minnesota here. And I'd realized that we'd all sit down as entrepreneurs and be like, hey, Lynn, you think I should hire that president from out of the company? Or do you think I should promote the second generation? Or, hey, I'm thinking about buying my building. Or, you know what? I think we're going to launch this product, or I'm going to buy this company that's got an adjacent product market fit. What do you think? Right. And then everybody puts all their ideas in. And I just I step back and I go, well, what are we all solving for? And then I'd look at like EOS or scaling up or OKRs or you name all these systems, which I like a lot.
Right.
But a lot of people on their BHAG, their 10-year, 5-year, 1-year, whatever it is, they throw in revenue. Right. So like, oh, here's where we're going. I want to go from 20 million to 25 or 25 to 50 or 1 million to 5 million, whatever the threshold is. Right. And as I've been thinking about it, Lynn, over the last decade, I'm like, well, my dad and I own a $20 million business that lost 940 grand in 09. And if we would have sold in 09, we would have owed the bank $2.5 million. So if why is that the BHAG that everybody's marching towards? And I'm like, this is insane that it's just revenue, because the ultimate goal of a North Star goal is that all of the decisions should get you closer to your goal. Well, if that's the lens and revenue's the lens, well, how do we know if we launch that product or service, hire that person? Well, we don't know if we have enough cash flow, whether it's actually going to grow a valuable company. Because I've interviewed at least 100 people in my podcast that they financed their way to a large valuation and then they owed more money than it was worth. So who gives that crap? So my point is, it's like, if we have this lens to say, hey, what is this company worth? And it truly, and I came into this because I was trying to help my friends that were entrepreneurs, but I realized that they didn't know what they were solving for. I'm like, is it a more valuable company? Is it more time? Is it more freedom? And people didn't know. It was just this revenue was this blind goal. So my point is, as I was helping people, identifying like, what is it the company worth today, and what do you want it to be worth? Because it like your ability as a business owner to finance that growth. What if you can't take any salary between now and when you get that valuation? Someone might say, well, I can't. So then why are we pretending? Right. So then we have to maybe slow down some growth. So this kind of goes into your guys' world where like what I like to do is, and why I went on this rabbit hole when you asked the question of helping people and grow value and a valuable asset. If someone doesn't want to, I don't care. I just want them to get what they want. And so we had this one gentleman who went through one of our boot camps, and he has an executive recruiting firm. And he determined that he actually wasn't going to create an asset because he was doing about 2.5 million in revenue. He had like 7 employees. And he's like, if I just saved my money this next 5 years, I could actually retire. instead of randomly investing in flashy objects that his entrepreneurial buddies were telling him to invest in, because he didn't want to create, he was going to be financially free no matter what. He didn't have to create an asset. My point is
That's
identifying,
interesting.
identifying what
Yeah.
do people
Right.
want,
Right. Yeah.
and when, from a valuation perspective, then can give
Right.
us a framework to say, do you want to invest your time and money and energy to build an asset? What does that journey look and feel like? And then what you guys do, how are you going to fund that growth, and how does it impact your cash flow and your timing?
Exactly. So that's the business Arkona. How does Arkona make money?
So we
Or
have three revenue
okay.
streams. Think about it like the do it yourself, do it with you, do it for you. We've got a training business. So we have an educational program that's online or in person. That's called Intentional Growth, how to view and run the company as a financial asset using these 5 principles. We use 2 case studies, Lynn, and we
Yes.
walk through like, what do they want? What are their financial targets for cash flow and the target equity valuation? What are all the ways they can exit the business, from an ESOP to private equity to internal transfers and strategics, and to then how do they grow the value of the company in light of their target valuation, their target timeline, and target needs. So
Right.
then we are taking the 3 financial statements and we're saying, where are you today? And what's your target valuation at a point in time? Teaching them how those decisions can be made to keep them on track. And then the 5th principle is the team of advisors. So that's the do-it-yourself. Essentially, Lynn, the goal was with the company was, I just wanted to help people understand how the stuff works. So after we sold, I went through 5 years of doing the podcast and doing speaking events. And I was like, hey, I just want to help people understand this stuff.
Right.
That then led to the do it yourself, actually, which we have a financial dashboard offering. When people got done with the training, like, hey, can you build the financial roadmap that you're talking about? So we have a financial dashboard and operational dashboard that connects their current financials to where they want to be with the valuation. And then the 3rd offering is the fractional CFO services, essentially the do it for you, essentially where people want to hit the easy button, where we sit on their L10s if they're running EOS and help them build that financial roadmap.
Okay. The other day, Ami wrote an article about the importance of understanding your financial house before you even start with one of the systems, be it, scaling up or EOS or whatever.
Love it. Love it.
Right. So this speaks exactly to what he was talking about. So the importance of entrepreneurs getting the education on the business financials. And if you don't have a clue about that, building on top of that there's no foundation.
Well, right. And it's like, well, what are we solving for? We're like,
right.
And I agree wholeheartedly. Then, so I'll comment real quick, and then I'll explain like why I think like this is like, I believe that EOS and some of these systems, I love them to death, Gino, and I like love what people are doing. But like, I've watched too many EOS implementers be like, just hire an integrator. I'm like, well, they can't afford one. So why are we talking about this? Or just sit down and have the 3-year, the 1 year, and then the 90-day rocks. Well, what if they can't afford the rocks that they're putting down? And what if the rocks that they're investing in don't grow the value of a company?